Hi everyone. Today's lesson is going to be about how to apply the dotted quarter notes that we talked about in the last two lessons on chairs to mend. If you haven't yet watched the two videos on how to play chairs to mend and how to analyze the rhythm in chairs to mend, please go back and watch those videos first. It's really important you understand how this rhythm sounds before we try and read it in different scenarios. Today's lesson is about reading that idea in two different songs. We're going to do line 92 that you see in the top of the screen there, and if I scroll down, we're going to do line 94. In both of these cases, it's focusing on having the dotted rhythm at the beginning of the measure. It's the same rhythm and it's kind of the same way if it happens at the end of the measure, but it feels different, especially if we look at line 96. So we'll come to that one later. So the focus of today is when we have it at the beginning of the measure. The most important thing that I need you to remember, and was discussed in the last videos, is that a dotted quarter note is the same length as 3/8 notes. So you'll remember that when we took apart the rhythm the first time, I had you chant, "We don't want your old rags. We don't want your." And we found that the eighth note, this eighth note here, occurred on that fourth count. So the dotted "we don't want," and then "your" was the fourth one. And we could count that the way they've written it here, 1 and 2, and. So we can see there's always 3/8 note pulses inside there. In fact, in this box here at the top of the page, instead of writing this, it would have been helpful if they've instead wrote this, so that we can see that a dotted quarter note is the same as 3/8 notes tied together. This rule of 3 is very important in any dotted note that we know. For example, if you know that a dotted half note is equal to 3 quarter notes, then you know that a dotted quarter note is equal to 3/8 notes, and a dotted eighth note is equal to 3/16 notes. This rule of 3 keeps on going anytime you have a note that has a single dot after it, or a single augmentation point. All right, so let's take a look at line 92. We'll look first at the counting. So we can see that we have a dotted quarter note on beat 1, and that last 3/8 notes, that would be 1 and 2. And so the next eighth note happens on and then we've got quarter notes on beat 3 and 4. So if we were going to count that, we could count 1 and 3, 4, making sure you do it in time. 1 and 3, 4. Same rhythm as chairs to mend old. In fact, it's exactly the same as the first measure of chairs to mend. Let's keep going. 1, 3. This measure is exactly like the first. 1 and 3, 4. Remember that the dotted quarter note here lasts as long as 1 and 2, and the next note is and. All right, now this next measure here is very similar, but instead of chairs to mend old, it's just chairs to mend. The oddest measure, let's do this one first because that one's easy. The oddest measure is this measure here. This is 1 and 2, that's and. This one here again lasts 3/8 notes, so it will be 3 and 4. And. All right, so I've set my metronome to pulse in 8 notes, and I'm going to count this for you. You'll notice that as I do it, you'll hear 3 pulses during the dotted quarter note, 1 and 2, and then I'll make sure that I say that and exactly on the 4th eighth note pulse. Here I go. 1 and 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 1, and 3, and 1, 2, 3. Now I could also use the words to chairs to mend to help me think about how it goes. Each time I see a dotted quarter note and eighth note followed by one of the note, I can think of it as chairs to mend. Listen to this. Still, there's going to be 3 subdivisions inside each dotted quarter note. Chairs to mend old 1, 3. Chairs to mend old chairs to mend chairs, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now that gets a little bit awkward because I kept switching back and forth between the chairs to mend words so that I could get the rhythm right, and the numbers for we didn't have that chairs to mend rhythm. You'll notice it was especially awkward when I had to go chairs to mend, when we had those two rhythms back to back. Counting that one for me makes much more sense. 1 and 3 and 1, 2, 3. Let me play that for you. One, two, three. Now I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that again and play along with it. The most common mistakes I hear when children try and play this the first time is they look at dotted quarter notes followed by eighth notes, and instead of thinking 1 and 3, they play it as if it were 1, 2, 3. So if you play this line and it comes out like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, you know you've made a serious error because you made the dotted quarter note the same length as the eighth note that comes after it. Essentially, you've turned them into quarter notes. Make sure when you do this line that you're playing the rhythm correctly, either thinking 1 and 3 or chairs to mend. Again, like I said in the last video, if you're tapping your foot is going to hit the ground twice during the dotted quarter note, and that and is going to be when your foot's up. Down, up, down. Tapping your foot can be useful to find notes that begin on and. Now, let's do the same thing with Alouette. I want you to take a moment and count this out. The dotted quarter notes only happen twice. It's in 2/4 times, so we're not going to have any 1 and 3. The next thing after that and is always going to be 1. So I'll give you a moment, figure out the counting, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got the counting written on the screen. It's marked vivace. I'm going to play it quite a bit slower than vivace, but still pretty quick. We'll go at this tempo here. 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1, 2. 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1. 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1, 2. 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1. Now, it's always a good idea, of course, to when you're doing the things for the first time, to do them at a slower tempo. Here is the same rhythm at a slower tempo, just to make sure that we're doing it accurately. 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1, 2. 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1. 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1, 2. 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1. Now, before I play it for you, I want to point out the biggest mistake that people usually make on this one, aside from miscounting the rhythm and trying to play that rhythm as quarter notes. The biggest mistake they make is they ignore the key signature. I want you to pay careful attention to these notes here. This is a trombone part, and I can see from the key signature and the trombone part that there are B flats, but no E flats and no A flats. So I know that these A's have to be A natural. These A's and these A's both have to be A natural. If you play saxophone, those A's are going to be F sharps on yours. If you play trumpet or clarinet, those would be B naturals, not B flats. Let me play it for you now with the metronome. 1, 2, 3. play it at a faster tempo. 1, 2, 3. Now, it's far more important that you play it correctly than you play it fast. I recommend going as slow as you need to make sure that you're playing that rhythm evenly, and then you can gradually work it up to a faster and faster speed, always making sure that the dotted quarter note is worth exactly 3 eighth note pulses, and then the eighth note after comes exactly on the fourth pulse. As always, guys, thanks for listening and thanks for stopping by.